Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Kopi Jana Bhagava Girivadari Jaya Girivadari Kopi Jana Bhagava Girivadari Jaya Girivadari Yasodanandana Brajajaranjana Jaya Brajajaranjana Yasodanandana Brajajaranjana Jaya Brajajaranjana Yamunadira Bhavachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamunadira Bhavachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramhangsa Brahmadakacharya Asadhara Sadushi Shiman His Divine Grace Shalesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hariva Slava Zabrani Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Gurangi Namo Vishnu Vadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhute Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shinivadi Pascatyade Satarne. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Kiranjana Salakaya Chaksura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shigaro Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shigaram Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vasakans Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Siddhadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 3, The Birth of Lord Krishna, Text 25. Nashte loka dviparadavas Nashte loka dviparadavasane Mahabhuteshvadi bhutam guneshu Vyakte vyaktam kala megena yete Bhavan eka ishate shesha samgya Nashte loka dviparadavasane Mahabhuteshvadi bhutam gateshu Vyakte vyaktum kala vegena yete Bhavan eka shishate shesha sangyaha Vegena yete Bhavanlika shishate shesha sangyaha Ashte loka dviparadavasane Mahabhuteshvadi bhutam gateshu Yakte vyaktam kala vagena yate Bhavanika shishate shesha sangyaha. Ladies, Mahabhuteshvadi bhutam guneshu Vyakte vyaktam kala vegena yete. Vavaneka shishade sheshagyaha. Nashte. After the annihilation. Loke. Of the cosmic manifestation. Dviparada avasane. After millions and millions of years, the life of Brahma, Mahabhuteshu, when the five primary elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, Adibhutam, Kateshu, enter within the subtle elements of sense perception. Vyakte, when everything manifested. Avyaktam, unto the unmanifested. Kalavegena, by the force of time. Yate, enters. Bhavan, your lordship. Eka, only one. Shishate, remains. Ashesha Sangyaha, the same one with different names. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. After millions of years, at the time of cosmic annihilation, when everything manifested and unmanifested is annihilated by the force of time, the five gross elements enter into the subtle conception, and the manifested categories enter into the unmanifested substance. At that time, you alone remain, and you are known as Ananta Sheshanaga. Purport. At the time of annihilation, the five gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, enter into the mind, intelligence, and false ego, ahankar. And the entire cosmic manifestation enters into the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone remains as the origin of everything. The Lord is therefore known as Sheshanaga, as Adi Purusha, and by many other names. Devaki therefore prayed. After many millions of years, when Lord Brahma comes to the end of his life, the annihilation of the cosmic manifestation takes place. At that time, the five elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether, enter into the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva again enters by the force of time into the unmanifested total material energy. The total material energy enters into the pradhana, and the pradhana enters into you. Therefore, after the annihilation of the whole cosmic manifestation, you alone remain with your transcendental name, form, quality, and paraphernalia. O my Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, because you are the director of the unmanifested total energy, and the ultimate reservoir of the material nature. My Lord, the whole cosmic manifestation is under the influence of time. Beginning from the moment up to the duration of the year, all act under your direction. You are the original director of everything and the reservoir of all potent energies. So the verse again. After millions of years, at the end of the cosmic annihilation, at the time of the cosmic annihilation, when everything manifested and unmanifested is annihilated by the force of time, the five gross elements enter into the subtle conception, and the manifested categories enter into the unmanifested substance. That time you alone remain, and you are known as Ananta Sheshanaga. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Sarasvatundeve Gauravani Vicharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyade Satarne. Devaki is mentioning some different philosophical points here. One is that everything we see and everything we don't see is actually Krishna's energy. Simultaneously one but different from Krishna. That everything is spiritual, and this energy that we perceive is originally it's spiritual energy, the spiritual energy, Krishna's effulgence, and it's transformed into pradhan, which means the varieties potentially manifesting themselves. And from pradhan comes avyakta, the unmanifested varieties. From that comes the mahatattva, and in the mahatattva we find varieties. Bhumira apanalo vayu kamano buddha evacha ahankara iti ame bina prakriti ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then aparayamitas twamyam prakriti vidime puram jiva bhutam mahabaho yedam daryate jagat. Then Krishna injects by his glance through Ramadevi, carries the living entities into the material energy, into the mahatattva, and the manifestations take different forms. So that's what we see around us, is actually Krishna's energy under the spell, under the influence of time. Above the three modes is time. Time is what changes everything. So we may think we're changing things, but actually it's time that's changing everything. And time is kalosmi bharatarshava. Time I am. Krishna, as the super soul in everyone's heart, knows exactly what everyone desires and everyone deserves. And he arranges through his material nature to continue, there's a continuous interaction between what we're desiring and what we deserve, and Krishna is arranging through time and the three modes different manifestations of his energy so we can suffer and enjoy here. So nothing happens outside of Krishna. So if we want to blame someone for our problems, we can always blame Krishna. And although Krishna says that he's actually not responsible. The chamatani bhutani paishame yogam aishwaram. Actually, yeah, that's also the chatatani karmani nibandanti dhananjaya udasinadva ad asinam asaktam teshu karmasu. Although Krishna says he's manifesting and annihilating unlimited universes, but he also says, I'm doing it simply like a judge, completely neutral. Now the cosmic manifestation was created for two reasons. One, to give the living entities a chance to be independent. And the more independent they become from Krishna's direction, the more they suffer. Still, one can follow Krishna's direction without being in love with Krishna, and one may wind up in the heavenly planets for some time, seemingly enjoying. Of course, it is said that even Brahma, who lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion years, he also is not happy. Happiness can only be when we realize we're eternal. Otherwise, however much we may think we're enjoying in the material world, in the back of our mind, we know it comes to an end. The ice cream cone, especially here in Ljubljana, tastes wonderful, but with every lick it's disappearing. It doesn't increase. And even Lita Govinda will run out of ice cream if we get too desirous. The supply is not unlimited, usually. Therefore, every lick, with more anxiety, it's disappearing, and we're back into our normal state of environment without ice cream. Similarly, in the material world, the more pleasurable we find ourselves in a situation, the more we become attached to it. And the more we become attached to something, the more we fear its disappearance. And the more we fear its disappearance, the more we suffer because of attachment. And the more we're suffering, the slower time goes. And the less we become attached. The slower the time goes, the more we suffer, the less we become attached to the material energy. Because we were hoping it's going to cause us some happiness, and it's doing the exact opposite of why we came here. Therefore we become detached. The problem is that people become detached from the material energy, but they don't know what to attach themselves to. And therefore they wind up even becoming attached to their suffering. When they talk to each other, they talk about, I had 3 operations, and the other person said, well, I have 4. In a superior way, they proclaim, I'm suffering more than you are. I deserve more sympathy and attention than you do, because I'm the object of all kinds of suffering. So one even becomes attached to the suffering as a mark of excellence, superiority, because we have to become attached to something. But the material nature is supposed to cause us suffering. Matter of fact, it's always causing us suffering, especially in Kali Yuga on this planet. But sometimes we think we're suffering less, and we call that happiness. And what causes us to suffer less, we become attached to. And then because of that attachment, we suffer, even from the things that are causing us less suffering. Still, 1 ice cream cone is worth it all. Because that's all we know, that's all people know. And even we become devotees, if we're still attached to our material energy, hoping to squeeze something out of it in the future, then it blocks our consciousness, so we can't, because spiritual existence is the subtlest of everything. It's beyond the material senses, mind, and intelligence. Indriyani paranyahor, indriyebhya paran manasastu para buddhir, yo buddhe paratastu saha. That the working senses are superior to dull matter. That is, this is Krishna's energy that's been described as the dull matter. But it's working under some superior force. Superior to the senses is the mind, but the mind is neutral. It works under the intelligence. And Krishna is supplying intelligence. To who? Superior to the intelligence is the soul, according to what the soul is desiring. So when the soul desires to become absorbed in the material nature, then Krishna gives the intelligence and the false ego in order to do it. And when the soul tries to connect itself by intelligence to Krishna, then Krishna gives the soul, in proportion to one's intensity and steadiness of desire, the ability to perceive Krishna. And if one comes to the platform of perceiving Krishna in such a way that it's pleasureful, that it's at least enlightening, it's clarifying, it's gives one hope in the future of a better existence, then the result is that one becomes attached to hearing about Krishna, applying that knowledge in one's life with this energy, with our desire to utilize this energy in Krishna's service, and therefore the pleasure increases, the enlightenment increases, the steadiness increases, and one gradually becomes Krishna conscious. But because of our long habits, being attracted to past instances in this life or in previous lives of what we thought or perceived was happiness in the midst of our struggling, Therefore, we can't give up the idea, maybe if that happiness was just increased a little bit more, then it would be worth living in the material existence again. So Maya, yogas chalati manasa, usually will not remind us, when we're devotees especially, of the suffering we went through. Maya will always remind us of all the things we left behind. And if I had another chance to enjoy them, I'd know how to do it perfectly now. Because by the grace of Krishna, now I've gotten enough intelligence to learn how to enjoy in the material energy and not get stung by it. So let me go back in my time machine with my mind, because I can't go with my body, and just live the perfect life of sense enjoyment with all the great realizations I've already gotten from my devotional service. And at least within my mind, I can have a happy time. So that's called Maya's trick. One is trying to get out of the material nature. One has an opportunity to engage these very senses, mind, intelligence, and with a proper understanding of ourselves, proper identification as Krishna's eternal servant, understand that if we try to please Krishna, then we'll be pleased, eternally pleased. We'll experience unlimited pleasure that goes on forever. Therefore, when we talk about this living entities are not meant for sense gratification, they're not meant to gratify the pushings of these material senses we've acquired. But we have to gratify our spiritual senses, because that's our position. And we gratify our spiritual senses by lovingly serving Krishna. Then our spiritual senses can be gratified, and they can actually be gratified. Of course, our material senses can also be gratified if we don't try to overextend the sense gratification. If we give them exactly what they need, for instance, hunger, to gratify it doesn't require, a massive amount of prasadam to gratify hunger. Of course, if we eat and we're not used to eating what's necessary, our senses may be gratified, but our mind won't be gratified. Because a lot of what we do when we're eating is not trying to gratify our physical senses, it's trying to gratify our mind. And the mind has different ways of being gratified. That I'm the Lord, I can do what I want, I'm independent, I can eat as much as I want. I'll show you. You had 5 samosas, I'm going to have 6. Show you who's the boss around here. Or the senses may demand that if you have more, the more the merrier. Therefore, one has to have enough intelligence, or at least tolerate that, to look at the plate, try to figure out how big is my stomach, what is actually my hunger. And if we actually use our intelligence before we eat, not after we eat, oh, why did I do that? Again, tricked. No, if we actually look at it and eat what's necessary, or maybe a little tiny more, then get used to serving our senses as much as they actually need or as much as they deserve, and therefore tolerate the pushing of the mind which comes immediately. You rascal, you've forsaken your duty, you don't love this body anymore, you're suffering from some kind of cultish mentality, not serving your body anymore, or your mind. No, if we just tolerate, then after a while we just find out that actually this pushing of the senses really just goes away after some time if it's just neglected. And actually we feel better. That actually we get more energy from the food rather than becoming tired after eating it and looking for the nearest place to lie down and hibernate. So that's called using your intelligence, and Krishna will supply that. That's why he not only sent all these elements into the material energy, he also gave us intelligence in the human form of life, especially. Because the animals, they generally don't eat more than they need. They don't sleep more than they need. They're very regulated in their habits, unless they associate with human beings and then become neurotic. These cats and these dogs, by too much bad association with human beings, they become as neurotic as the human beings are. Therefore, as human beings, we should use our intelligence and eat what's necessary, sleep what's necessary, mate what's necessary, and try to cut down these things like defending, creating within our mind enemies that don't exist except for in our mind, defeat the enemies in our mind and feel ourselves good and powerful. All these mental concoctions that we go through just waste our time and prevent us from actually absorbing it in Krishna. So the point is, everything is coming from Krishna, that we don't have to solve all the problems in the world. We should try to solve at least our own problems, and then do what's, as an instrument of Krishna, try to spread Krishna consciousness as a solution to the problems of the world. There's wars going on, there's famine, there's pestilence, there's this and that. And it's all by Krishna's arrangement. He's making the arrangement for everyone at every moment. Every living entity is getting exactly what they deserve. But this Hare Krishna movement gives people more than they deserve by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to give them Krishna consciousness, which will end their suffering and the causes of their suffering. So we should understand these politicians, they're always promising, but they're all cheaters. Even though they're trying not to cheat, even though they're trying to be honest, but they don't know what honesty is because they don't know who they are. They're masquerading, they're in a costume, false ego. And therefore they can't even help themselves because they're bound by the false ego. Andaya tandira pigimanas te piksha tantra urudami bara. They're blind and therefore they're misleading the other blind people. So therefore every devotee who tries to give others Krishna consciousness, every devotee who's actually practicing Krishna consciousness, to whatever extent they do, they're doing valuable service to society and to themselves. Everyone else is, unless they're following some religious principles, trying to make some progress towards God consciousness, they're just wasting their time. So we should be convinced about that and not become overly enamored by these persons who seem to have awareness of different things or knowledge of different things, but especially politics and their views of the world are all distorted. And usually their views of everything is distorted. They don't know anything. If it's not coming from the Bhagavatam, what is philosophy? What is astronomy? What is the laws of karma? What is medicine? If it's not in line with the Vedic culture, there is simply an ignorance to different degrees. Less ignorance, they call that knowledge, and more ignorance, they label it ignorance. So we should be convinced that there's no better shelter than Krishna and Krishna consciousness. And if we want to help anyone, if we have any desire to help anyone, we should try to give them some Krishna consciousness in some way or another. And how this material energy arranges is not up to us. We can't will peace we can't will prosperity into being. It only comes from people when they become Krishna conscious. Everyone else is going the opposite way. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your lecture, Maharaj. I'm just thinking, we hear a lot about mind, intelligence, senses. Can you explain us how to deal with emotions? From where emotions come? Do we need just to use our intelligence? Just to control emotions? Or just to understand that everything comes from Krishna?
Buddhyavyakta evacha, indriyaya nidisaikamcha, pancha chandriya gochara. Mahabhuta, out of the Mahabhuta, the Mahatattva comes things like desire, envy, all these different types of intelligence. Along with the gross material elements comes the subtle material elements too. The mind includes things like desire, hatred, attachment, everything. So what we want to do is use our intelligence to connect ourselves with Krishna so that the mind thinks about Krishna. That our emotions become spiritual when they're in contact with Krishna. So before we were hankering for something, whatever we're hankering for, maybe freedom from distress, whatever. But when we connect our intelligence with Krishna, then we hanker for Krishna. When we lament, then we lament that we don't have Krishna. And therefore become spiritual. As a matter of fact, the more we connect with Krishna, the more we'll simultaneously hanker for Him and lament that we don't have Him. So emotions will be there, but not the low-class material emotions that cause pain. All the emotions will cause ultimately great spiritual happiness. So material emotions are based on illusion, and spiritual emotions are based upon awareness, upon real consciousness.
This is also with love. Love is also emotion.
Love is Ananda. Love and Ananda, that's Ananda is love. Yes, we have an eternal propensity to love something. We're just loving the wrong things, that's all. We love this body. We love so many things in connection that gratify the senses. We love so many different things. So that love is natural. It's coming from the soul. But when we love Krishna, then we love everything. Because Krishna is everything. So we want to expand our love beyond a very small dot. We can expand it unlimitedly if we love Krishna. Because Krishna loves everyone. And if we love Krishna, then we'll love everyone just like Krishna does. We'll be on the same platform Krishna is. We'll love everything and everyone. There won't be any more lamentation, material.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hwala Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.